This happened when I was in grade 6. I was new in school. I just moved into the area and quickly found a group of friends. And this group was Joe, a very average kid who seemed to fit in. But for some reason, he was always the butt of the joke. I soon joined the jokes and bullying, which to me at the time seemed more playful than hurtful. Me and the group usually hung out after school, but never inviting Joe. One day, Joe tells us all that his dad is going away for a family emergency. Joe is expected to stay at his mom's house, but he left him a house key anyway. We decided we'd buy some weed and come over that weekend. Joe was happy to have company. That night, we smoked more than ever before and pressured him to let us drink a few of his dad's beers he found stashed. We were all having fun until one of us fell on a coffee table, shattering glass all over the floor. Joe was upset but seemed to move on. Soon after, Joe thought it would be funny to chase us with a huge butcher's knife. We ran and locked him out of his own room. I took it as a joke, but one of my friends was hysterical with fear and made us keep the door locked. We asked him through the door what the hell he was doing, but he just sat there silently scratching the door with the knife. Several minutes later, we heard him walk away. After a while, I decided that I'd go see what's the matter with him. I walked into a pitch black hall and turned on the light. I saw him sitting down the hall in a chair, hooded and petting something in his hand. I asked him what he was doing and he only replies with, "My precious." In his hand, he had a half-smoked joint. I told him that it was okay and we understand he was joking. The rest of the friends calmed down enough to unlock the door and head home. This left me and one other friend who both lived far away, staying with Joe. Things seemed fine and we set up sleeping bags lined up to each other. The next morning, my friend was stretching his arms when I noticed a patch of red on the back of his shirt. He was cut. A small piece of skin torn away, revealing a tiny bit of white flesh. In Joe's sleeping bag was a shard of glass and the tip was stained red. We asked him why he did it and he just said stone-faced,
"I don't know."
Being dumb kids, we assumed it was an accident and forgot about it, never returning to Joe's house. Now in retrospect, I can't help to think how close we could have been to death, and that we may have been the ones that almost pushed him to the point of killing someone. One evening about 8 years ago, it was pouring outside and we got a call from an elderly woman. She called in and said that she was hearing footsteps in her house and she thought there was a ghost inside. She regularly heard the sound of someone walking upstairs, but she lived alone. We went just to check it out and make sure everything was okay. She stayed on the line with the 911 operator because she was frightened. About 3 minutes after she initially called in, she said that there was actually a man standing outside in her backyard, staring at her through her sliding glass door. Petrified, the woman froze in that spot and continued to stare directly at the man. For the next minute or two, she said that he was just standing there, still as could be, staring at her. Eventually the man took off out of sight. When we arrived, about 12 minutes after the call first came in, we went to the front door. I remained in the foyer with the woman. The other officer went to the backyard to see if the man was still hiding out or if there were any traces of him. I spoke with her for several minutes until the other officer returned. He said there was no trace of anyone having been in the backyard. We set off to do a quick sweep before we left to make sure the house was all clear. In our living room, the room that the sliding glass door was in, we discovered a trail of mud and footprints inside the house. I asked the woman if she'd been outside at all that day or if anyone had been over to visit her. She said no, that she lived all alone and that no one had come to visit. The woman was very old, probably around 85, and had very poor eyesight and was hard of hearing, as elderly people tend to be. The woman obviously had seen the man's reflection and mistakenly thought he was in front of her, on the other side of the glass in her backyard. In reality, he had been standing only a few feet behind her in the same room, while she had been talking to 911. Nothing was stolen, broken, or out of place, so we don't know what his intentions were. Who knows what would have happened had she not stayed on the line with the operator. I'm 18 and I live in a lower middle-class townhome complex with my divorced mom and my little brother. My mom was out of state for a week at the time and my little brother was staying at our dad's house for the week. The first day, I come home from a 10-hour shift at the gas station I work at, half a mile down the road from my house. I walk home and head into my basement and smoke a bowl before I fall asleep with my cat. A few hours later, I wake up with an uneasy feeling. It's 1 a.m. and I hear footsteps upstairs. I hear drawers upstairs being opened and immediately grab my switchblade and call 911. They send a squad car out and I stay on the phone. I hear someone coming downstairs. I jump to my feet, dropped my phone and drew my switchblade. The door opens. The light turns on, and in walks a man around my age, wearing a backpack and holding a crowbar. 5'10", 140 pounds, scrawny and shirtless me is standing there with a mere 4-inch blade, locking eyes with a man I've never seen before inside my house holding a crowbar. He jumped just as high as I did when he saw me. With a surge of foolish confidence, I point the knife towards him and told him not to step towards me. Funny, considering his crowbar had a solid foot of reach over my knife. He shouted,
"What the fuck? Bro, we didn't think anyone was here. I'm not looking for a fight."
I hear quick and heavy footsteps coming down and a voice saying,
"Yo, what the fuck are you doing down here?"
A second man emerges through the doorway, this one holding a pistol, and it's pointed at me once he notices me. His eyes light up, as do mine as I realize who I'm looking at. An old elementary school friend that I drifted out of contact with. I had some friends who started talking to him recently, but I heard that he had turned into a recreational Xanax addict. I didn't want to fuck with that, so I never bothered getting back in contact. Turns out that that's exactly why they were robbing my seemingly empty house, for Xanax money.
"Josh?"
He said in a questioning voice as he lowered the gun.
"Fuck, dude, I don't know what to say."
At this point, the door slammed open and the police rushed into the house, eventually coming downstairs and arresting the two. I had a bong on a desk next to my bed, roughly an ounce of weed in the desk, and the basement smelled pretty strongly. Luckily, the cop ended up being cool and just saying, "I honestly don't care. They need to just legalize it already. After what you've been through, you need a joint." I was never the delivery boy when I worked at Gino's Pizzeria, but when the new kid called out sick on like his second day, I had to take over for the night. It was a slow Tuesday night for deliveries, so it wasn't too bad. I made 3 normal deliveries within 3 hours. The place closes at 9 on weekends, so I estimated 1 or maybe 2 more deliveries for the night. I picked up the phone to a customer who sounded like the definition of a meth head or something. She had a raspy voice, she stuttered, she forgot what she was saying, she had long pauses. Literally, there was like a 10-second gap between her saying, "Can I just get and regular pizza?" It was a huge production getting the address from her. Sounded like she was asking someone in the background what the address was. After she gave me the address, she hung up without me even telling her the price or how long. Well, I was just so excited to meet these people. I told my chef, whose name was actually Mario, I know, a bit cliche, 1 regular pie. 10 minutes later, I was on my way. We live in the middle of absolute nowhere, so each delivery was a bigger trip with a bigger tip. There was a long and dark gravel road through the woods and occasional trailer homes I had to drive through until I finally reached their home. It was a trailer home. The lights were off inside, but I could see the orange glow of a fire coming from out back, and I could hear a woman yelling at someone. When I shut the passenger side door after grabbing the pizza, I noticed the curtains to one of the windows move. Somebody was just watching me. I didn't know if I should knock on their door or go around back. It sounded like there was more than one person back there, so I decided to just go around back. I greeted them and they spun around faster than a bullet. They were disgusting. They looked like typical trailer trash meth heads. The women looked at, I'm guessing her husband, and asked what he's doing here. He then scolded her, saying she was the one who gave the address. They seemed to be standing close together to hide something behind them, and quite frankly, I didn't want to see what it was. I asked them if I should go around front, and they whispered something to each other. The woman pointed at me and told me to wait there. She would go get the money. She went inside, and for the next 2 minutes, I awkwardly stood there, trying not to stare at this scary-looking guy who I knew was staring at me the whole time. Finally, the woman emerged from the house and went back next to the man. She handed the man some money and asked him to count it. She whispered something after that. I was getting very nervous now. I felt as if they were gonna try and rob me or something. I wasn't stupid. The man started counting the money very slow. I mean, really slow. Like 5, 10. I kept my eyes on the woman. She was looking into the woods behind me. And then she nodded her head, staring off behind me, and saw some huge guy approaching me with an axe in his hand. I flung the pizza box at him to try to slow him down, and somehow it worked. Or maybe he just didn't chase me. I got home safely and I didn't even go back to work that night. I'm happy that was the only night I had to deliver. So if you live in the suburbs or city, sure, be a pizza boy. But if you live in the middle of nowhere, maybe try the supermarket instead. The holidays have never been a good time for me. My dad left when I was 10. Yes, it's tragic, but nothing out of the norm. He left us on Christmas Eve and never came home. Said he was going out for some wrapping paper, and that was the last we saw of him. For 25 years, my mother had learned to deal with this. A slow process for a woman so much in love. Dad was everything to her, to all of us. Growing up without a father was tough, but again, nothing out of the norm. Lots of my friends growing up only had one parent. You were more abnormal if your parents had stayed together. At least that's how we all coped with it. Mom died 2 years ago, and now I was in charge of hosting the family Christmas at our old house. The house that was Mom and Dad's so many years ago. None of us wanted to come back to a place full of so many bad memories. But we all knew it's what she would have wanted if she was still alive. My younger brother and sister were late again this year. Typical. I could never count on either of them to be on time for anything. None of us were great cooks, so we opted to have pizza delivered. We ate in silence, then spent the next hour and a half trimming the tree. We all plopped down on the couch and dust spurted out from the cushions. "It's freezing in here, Joe," my brother Danny said. "Anyone know how to start a fire?" "I don't," Jan said, and both turned to look at me. The eldest sibling gets all the stupid jobs. It must be some kind of intergalactic law. There was already wood in the house, so we gathered what we could and tried to get a nice, warm fire going. We weren't having much luck. Smoke filled the room and I fiddled with the fireplace and realized something was blocking the airflow. "This old piece of crap house," Jen said. "It doesn't surprise me nothing works around here." She was right. Mom had never bothered to fix anything since Dad had left, including the fireplace. Danny and I had offered several times to fix things around her place, but she wouldn't hear of it. She wanted everything kept just how it was, and believed someday Dad would come back. "I think I know what's wrong," I said as I continued working. That's when I smelled something awful and heard a rattling sound. A corpse, now a pile of dry bones and clothed in a Santa suit, hit the bottom with a thud. I jumped back and clamped my hands over my mouth. Jen screamed and Danny dropped to the floor while letting out painful sobs. A red, velvet bag came down next, filled with gifts labeled for each of us. Turns out Dad came back after all.